The, the mikveh? Okay. Morning. Morning, Walter. Hello. Morning, Ali.
Morning.
Good morning, everybody.
You got my text, Ali?
Yeah, but I just got home.
Oh, okay.
We're on a Nun Dalid, Amid Bays on the bottom, 54. We're going to be doing 55. So today is Daf Nun Hey. Mishnah. Zivchei Shalmei Tzibur Vashamois. Korbanos, like a public shlamim. The example of that is the Shtei Chvosim brought on Shavuos. And Ashamois, there are different types of Ashamos. Eloin Ashamos. Asham Gzelos. Somebody claims money. Somebody claims that you owe money to him, and you deny it, and you swear, and you told a falsehood. It was lying. So you have to pay the person. There's a fine of 20%, and you have to bring an osham gzelos, osham meilos. And if somebody benefited from hegdish, and you're over meila bishkaga, so then you bring an osham meila, osham shivcha charufa. Somebody who had relations with a shivcha knaanis, who had erison with an Eved Ivri. So that's a shivcha charufa. You have to bring an asham. Asham nazir. Part of if a nazir became tameh, if you remember, you have to bring 3 sets of korbanos. One of the korbanos is an asham. And asham mitzora, same thing. A mitzora, part of the purification of a mitzora is to bring an asham. Asham talui. Asham talui, we have 2 pieces of fat. One is chaylev, one is permitted fat in front of you. And you eat one of them. You don't know which one you ate. Maybe you ate kosher fat, maybe you ate chaylev. So if there was one piece of fat there, and you ate it, b'shoge, because you thought it was permitted, and somebody tells you, oh, that was a piece of chaylev. So then you bring a korban chatas, because you ate a piece of chaylev b'shoge. Here, we don't know what you did. You had 2 pieces. Maybe you ate a chaylev. Maybe you ate permitted. So there you bring this suspended asham, an asham tolu, that sort of gives you temporary kapara until such time in the future where somebody knows and tells you, oh, that piece you ate was really a piece of chaylev. Then you bring a real chatas. Or a person's misa, his death, will give him his final kapara. So all of these korbanos, the shalmei tzibur and the arshamois, shchitason b'tzafon. You have to shech them in the north. Kibul daman b'klisharis b'tzafon. You have to have Kabbalah in the north. Daman ton shtei maton shtei arba. You have to apply, like we said, the throwing it on one corner, which covers 2 walls, and the other corner 2 walls. So you basically put it on all 4 walls. V'nacholim lifnim and akloim. The meat can only be eaten in the azara, only by l'zichri kuhuna, by male kohanim. L'chol machal, any way they want to roast it, barbecue it, cook it, any way they want. Lo yom v'laylat chatzois. They can eat it that day until midnight. The Gemara asks Manola and the boy Tzafon. How do we know that the Shalmei Tzibur, which is the Kivsei Atzeres, need the north? The Tony Rabba Rav Chana Kamei de Rabba. Vasisem Seirizim Echad L'chatos. Ushnei Chvosim B'nei Shana L'Zevach Shlamim. So there's a hekesh between the shlamim and the chatas. Ma chatas b'tzofa nafshal meitzibur b'tzofa. Armalei Rav chitas meichem lamda. What do you mean? We're the whole din that a chatas is processed in the north. That we learned it from Ola. And the way you're doing it now, you're learning an Ola through a hekesh, Ola to chatas, and now you're learning another hekesh from a chatas to shlamim. We know that can't work. What the davar alamin behekesh choizim alamin behekesh by kotchim? We went through that whole thing and we rejected that. Ella Rav Mary Braid Rav Kahana brings another pasuk. Uviyom simchatchem v'moadechem uvrashei chodshechem utkatem chatzatzrois al oiloisechem v'al zivchei shalmechem. So there's directly a hekesh between an ola and a shlamim. So ma oila kodshe kodshim. And ola is a kodshe kodshim and af zivchei shalmei tzibur is kodshe kodshim. Ma olam b'tzof and af zivchei shalmei tzibur b'tzofa. So we learn the north directly from ola. El hekesha kamolamai asa. Okay, but what about the first chatas that you made? The first hekesh of vasisem sirizim lechatas, you made a connection between the shalmei tzibur and the chatas. What is that coming to teach me? To teach me something else. Ki chatas. Ma chatas ein nechelas el zichrei kuhuna. A chatas also is only eaten by male kohanim. They can't bring it home to their family to give to their wives or children. Av zilchei shalmei tzibur lezichrei kuhuna. Armelei abai ihachi gabi el nazir. The aisle that a nazir brings, tichsiv, v'krivis korbanol lashem, kevis ben shnoso tomim echad la'oila, v'chivsa achas bas shnoso lechatas, v'ayel echad tomim l'shlami. It's 3 korbanos that a nazir has to bring at the end of his naziris: an ola, a chatas, and a shlami. And now you've compared shlamim to these things. Hachanami nema hekesh hakasuv. The shlamim has been compared lechatas ma chatas ein nechelas el zichrei kunaf el nazir nami ein nechel zichrei kuhuna. We're going to see later on in the Mishnah that we're going to learn today that an el nazir can be eaten by anybody, not just zichrei kuhuna. But if this methodology is correct to make a hekesh like this, why don't we make a hekesh between the el ayil shlamim of a nazir to chatas and say that it only can be eaten by male kohanim? So the Gemara answers haki hashta. There's no comparison. Hasam by nail nazir kiven tichsiv v'lakacha kohenas azroa b'shelam in a ayil. You have to give the kohen a gift, the foreleg, the cooked foreleg of the ayil, and there it says that is given to the kohanim. Michlal the kule balim machle must be that the rest of the ayil is eaten by the balim. However, zroa b'shela mia lo lisachel el zichrei kuhuna. So, but the foreleg then can only be eaten by the male kohanim. But later on in the Mishnah, we're also going to see that ale, the zroa b'shela, can be given to their wives and to their avodim. So what's this kasha? So technically, from this hekesh, we should have learned that it should only be eaten from zichrei kuhuna. Yet the Mishnah later on is going to say that you can give it to their wives and to their avodim. So the Gemara leaves it as a kasha. V'boy sema, different answer. Kodshe ikri. This zroa of the Ela Nazir says kodesh ula kohen. But kodshe kodshim lo ikri, but it's not called kodshe kodshim. So kodshe kodshim restricts it to zichrei kuhuna, to only male kohanim. But regular kodshim can be given to their wives and children, or avodim. Elamayil chase iskish. Again, what's the Ela Shlamim hekesh to the chatas and to the ola coming to teach me? If it's really correct that you can, the zroa b'shela can be eaten by anybody. Amar Rava, different halacha. Im golach al echad mishloishta. Now the nazir now gets to take a haircut because the nazir for 30 days didn't take a haircut. When he brings his korbanos to complete his naziris, he's allowed to take a haircut. Now, you might think that he can't take his haircut until he brings all 3 korbanos. So this hekesh teaches us that im golach al achas mishloishtan yotzu, that that if he offered one of the korbanos and then took his haircut, even if he didn't bring the other two korbanos, he's still yotze his obligation. Okay, Mishnah. Hatoda, the toda is a korban shlamim, but it's brought for the 4 reasons. You were sick, you were healed, you were in prison, you were taken out of prison, you came back from a trip, or you were released from prison. In those cases, a normal shlamim is eaten for 2 days. A korban toda is eaten for 1 day, and you have to bring 40 loaves of bread with the toda. So the toda, the el nazir, which is a shlamim that the nazir brings, he has to bring breads with that as well. So, but they're considered kodshe kalim, and therefore shchitasu b'chol makom bazora. You can shech them anywhere, not just in the north. The daman ton shte maton shen arba. Same thing. You splash on one corner and splash on the other corner, and that covers you. V'necholim b'chol ha'ir. This meat can be eaten anywhere in the city of Yerushalayim, not just in the Azara. L'chol adam, whether he's a Kohen or a Yisrael. B'chol Michael, anyway, roasted, barbecued. Liyom v'layla ad chatzos, that day until midnight. Hamuramehem, the gifts that you give to the Kohanim, either the Zroa B'Sheila, the Toda, from the Toda you give the Chazav V'Shok, like other shlamim, and by the El Nazir you bring a Zroa B'Sheila. These are the things that are given to the Kohanim. Kiyotzu Behen, same thing. You can eat it anywhere in Yerushalayim for the day and the night. The difference is regular Yisraelim cannot eat that. The Kohanim can feed their wives, their children, and their avodim with what was given to them as a gift from the Toda and the El Nazir. Toda Rabbana. It says that when you give a shlamim and you have to give a gift to the Kohanim from the shlamim, you give the chazeh. As chazat nufa v'shokat truma tochlu b'makom tahor. Pasuk says you have to eat, the Kohen has to eat the chaz and the shok in a makom tahor. What does that mean? Amrav Nechemia. I don't know. What? The other karbonos he ate in a state of tumah or in a place of tumah? That doesn't make any sense. And the things that were talked about prior, before this pasuk, is the remainder of a mincha that the Kohanim eat in the Azara. Ela tor michlal shehu tomei. That means it's tar to a certain degree, tar mitumas mitzora. So, for example, mitzorim are sent out of Yerushalayim. Not only are they out of the Harabayas, right? There's 3 levels. City of Yerushalayim, which was like Machane Yisrael in the Midbar. Then you have a Harabayas. We talked yesterday at length how big the Harabayas was and how many other things are in the Harabayas. And then you have the Ezra's Kohanim. So when it says b'makom tahor, it's tor mitumas mitzora. That this is a place where the Mitzoram are sent out, which is the city of Yerushalayim. Aval tamim mitumas zav ve'ezeh machne Yisrael. That was the encampment 12 mil by 12 mil in the Midbar. And when the Beis HaMikdash was built, it was considered Yerushalayim. So this teaches us that the chaz and the shok can be eaten anywhere in Yerushalayim. Freak the Gemara of Ema. Maybe it's coming to teach us that the chazeh and the shok can only be eaten in a place that's tor mitumas zav v'tomim mitumas meis ve'ezeh machne levia. That's the Harabayas. Like Moshe was encampment was considered machne levia, and then you had the Azar where only the Kohanim could go in the Bnei in the Midbar, and the analogous case in Yerushalayim, the Harabayas is considered machne levia. Maybe the chaz of a shok can only be eaten in Harabayas and not in Yerushalayim. On Rabaya Amrakra, regarding the mincha, it says v'chaltem osa b'makom kadosh. So it's the osa b'makom kadosh. The mincha has to be eaten in the Azara. which is machna shnia. V'lo acher is makom kadosh. But the chazan and the tnufa, no. Afka l'machna levia, they were pushed at that point into Harabayis. And then Hadar Ksiv, then comes that other pasuk of as chazat nufa tochlu b'makom tahor. Now afka l'machna Israel. Now they're pushed into Yerushalayim. That's the way Abaye learns. Rava Omar, osap b'makom kadosh, v'lo acher's makom kadosh. That only the mincha is in the makom kadosh, i.e. the azara. And therefore, afke legamri, maybe that pushes it completely. You could even in Tel Aviv, not just Yerushalayim, even outside of the Machne Yisrael. So then, Hadar Kosev Rachmana Tochlu Makom Tahor. Now the pasuk that says you have to eat in the Makom Tahor, Ayla LaMachne Yisrael, it's brought into one Machne. So that Rava sort of learns it backwards from Abaye. Freit the Gemara ve'ema Ayla LaMachne Levia. Who says it? The pasuk of Tochlu Makom Tahor tells you to bring it into Yerushalayim. Maybe it tells you to bring it to Machne Levia, which is more thought of as a makom tahor. So the Gemara says, "L'chada ma'ilina and l'tarti lo ma'ilina." We don't skip. We go one in, not two in. For the Gemara, ihachi afuke nami. That when we removed it from the azara, we should say the same thing. L'chada mafkinan mitarti lo mafkinan. How come we moved him from the azara to Yerushalayim? We should have moved him to the Azor to the Makam Levia. Another kasha on Rava based on that. It says Lo sucha le'echol bisharecha v'kol nedarecha shetidor v'nidvosecha ksiv. So that's a raya that you can't have a havamina that you could eat korbanos anywhere, including Tel Aviv. So ela machvarta ki Abaye. The approach is Abaye, not Rava. We reject Rava. Mishnah. Shlomim kochim kalim. A regular korban shlomim is considered kochim kalim. Therefore, shkitasim b'chol makom bazara. We shech them anywhere in the azara. V'daman ton shtei matonos she'en arba. You give two gifts in the corner. V'nechole b'chol ha'ir. You can eat the shlomim anywhere in Yerushalayim. L'chol adam, to any person, b'chol Michael, any way you want to prepare it. L'shnei yamim v'laylecha, 2 days. So that's different than the Todah and the El Nazir. Hamura mehem kayotz behem. The gifts to the Kohanim follow the same restrictions. Ela shamurim nechel kohanim l'shem l'vneim lavdeim. But those can only be eaten by the Kohanim in their fel. Ton rabbanim. V'shachat, by the Shlomim, it says v'shachtu pesach ol moed. That's from a cow, and from a keves it says v'shachat osol lifnei ol moed. And it says by a goat v'shachat osol lifnei ol moed. La'ashers kol haruchos b'kochim kolim. This teaches me that I can shech kochim kolim anywhere, because it's all considered lifnei ol moed. And certainly the north would be kosher. Kosher can only be shechted in the north. Yet hochshur b'tzafon, because by the Ola it says al yerech hamizbech tzafona. Kosher kalim, we can shech them anywhere. And odin hochshur b'tzafon. Certainly they could be shechted in the tzafon. Rav Yezer Amar lo nemer hakasuv. No, the pasuk comes to be machshir the tzafon. Sheyachol, I could have had a havamina as a kavachomer the opposite. V'aloi dinu u'ma kochim kom shur b'chol haruchos lo shur b'makom etzel kochim kochim can shecht anywhere. Their place where you can shecht them has not been given a heter for kochim shlo yuchshul b'tzafon. Kochim, you can only shech them in the north. Maybe you cannot shecht kochim in the north. That you can shecht kochim even in the north. V'mai kamiflagi. What is the yesod of their machlokas? Tanakama Sover Tlasa Kroik Sivi. Right? We quoted 3 psukim. Chad, it says V'shachatu Pesach Moed, is Legufe de Nive. That there has to be Pesach Moed, as the Gemara will tell us what that means. V'chad, the other Lifnei Moed, is Lahachshir Tztadim. All the sides of the Azara, not just what's in front, even the sides. Not only that, V'chad is Lifsod Tzidei Tztadim. Things that are on the side of the side, which we'll explain, is not kosher. We don't need a pasuk to say that the north is permitted, because we learned it from a kavachomer. But Rabbi Yezer Sofer Chad Legufe de Nivi, we need one that has to be done Pesach Moed. V'chad Lachshir Tzafon, one is to say that it's kosher in the north. V'chad Lachshir Tztadim, and to also say that doing it on the sides would be permitted. The tzidei tztadim means the lishkos, like the offices. The part of the offices that are within the kodesh, you can't do the shechita there. So that's what's excluded. And the tzidei tztadim lo yitztrich kra, to get rid of it, we would understand that. Okay. It says, Maish na'achad d'chsiv pesach omoed, u'maish na'asam d'chsiv lifnei omoed. What's the difference? Kamash malon, k'Rav Yudam Shmuel. Rav Yudam Shmuel, shlomim, sheshachtan koidem sheyiftechu dalsos ha'hechol. It has to do with time. The doors of the hechel are open at a certain time. If the shechit of the shlomim is before that, psulin. Shenemar v'shachatu pesach omoed. Bizman shu patuach, v'lo bizman shu noel. Itmer nami, Amar ma'ukla barchama Rav Yosi Rav Chanina, shlomim sheshachtan koidem sheyiftechu dalsos ha'hechol. If you shechted the shlomim before you open the doors, psulin. They're not good. Shenemar v'shachtu pesach omoed. Bizman she pesach hayel pasuach, v'lo bizman shu noel. B'marava masniach in Eretz Yisrael they learn like this. Am Rav Yaakov Barach Am Rav Ashi Shlomim sheshachtan kodim sheyiftechu dalsos ha'hechol. Shlomim that was shechted before you opened up the doors, psulin. Uve Mishkan, there were no doors in the Mishkan. Kodim sheyamdu levim es Mishkan. If you shechted it before the Levim erected the Mishkan, because it was erected every day anew, then it would be puzzle. Or after the Levim took the Mishkan down, and then you shechted it, the Shlomim would be puzzle. Pshita Mugaf. That means if it's closed, even if it's not locked, kenol dummy. So vilon, like a curtain that's hanging over the opening. What's the din? On Rav Zeir hu atzmo, ein nase ella kepesach pasuach. It is only functioning a curtain when the door is open, so it can be considered as open, because the curtain is hung with tznius, but otherwise it's considered as if it's open. Goiva mai. Let's say there's a mound of dirt or a tree in front of the Pesach. Is that mafsik? Is it considered like the door's open or closed in order to passel the shchita? So Toshma, the Tanya Rav Yisrael de Omer, Shnei Pishpishin. There were 2 openings, Hayu, the Besa Khalifos. There was an office where they got the knives. It's when you walked into the Heichal and the Ulam, so that's where the knives were kept. The Goivan Shmoina, it was 8 amos high, these pishpishin. So to open up all, even behind where the Kodesh Kodashim is, right? The west portion of the Azorah is also called the Fnei Olmoy. My lavdeka kamayu shmona. There was something in front of them that was 8 amos high, and maybe that's an answer to our question about if there's a tree in front of the Pesach. What's this low? The Gavuninu, they themselves are shmona. So there's no raya to us. Meisvei. Kol ha'sha'arim sha'ayu sham, all the gates in the Beis Hamikdash, goivin esrim amma, 20 amas high, v'rochvan esr amma, and 10 amas wide. So how can you say that these were only 8? Pish pish and shani, because the pish pish, they're not really gates. They're small doors, special doors. Therefore, they could be smaller. So the question is, how did these small doors makshir the whole Azara? Va'ikit studied. You have from the north and to the south of the Beis Chalifos, so they're not pointing to the west where the Pishposhim were. The Ma'ayale, Bekir and Zavis, they're opened like in a corner. So they're really open to all sides. What about Achor Beis HaKaparis? What about behind the Kodesh Kodashim? That doesn't, the Pish doesn't open up there. So the answer is Toshma Adam Rami Rav Yudah Marav. Lul Kot Nayachre Beis HaKaparis. There was a small opening, a window, behind where the Kodesh Kodashim was. Gavor Shmona Amas, Kedei Lachshir Zazar Lachilas Kodesh Kodashim, Shchilas Kodesh Kodashim. That you could eat korbanos there as well, and you could shech there, would be considered lifnei ol moed. Hainu tichsiv, that's why it says in Divrei Yomim, shnayim lepar bar. My lepar bar. Amar Rav Shila, commando Amar klape bar. That opening is like as if it's opening to the outside. On the other side of the Kodesh Kodashim, which is in the west. Okay, very good. Okay, we said tomorrow, 7.
At 7.